I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:01. Can we all please stand and salute the flag? The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or agreed upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Matawan Aberdeen Regional School District Board of Education advertised this meeting on April 2nd, 2018 in the Asbury Park Press and in the Star Ledger. This notice was sent to the municipal clerks of the Borough of Matawan and the Township of Aberdeen and the Matawan Aberdeen Joint Free Public Library. This notice was also placed on the district website. Mr. Ferrera, roll call, please.
Thank you. Good evening. Mr. Ahern?
Here.
Mr. Aiken? Mr. Bradenham?
Here.
Dr. Delaney?
Here.
Ms. Friedman?
Here.
Ms. Martinez?
Here.
Ms. Nappi?
Here.
Ms. Esposito? Ms. Gentili?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nappi, and I'm going to take your computer back when it comes time to go into executive session. I appreciate that. May I have a motion to accept the minutes of the July 23rd, 2018 regular action meeting and the July 23rd, 2018 executive session, please?
I make a motion.
Mrs. Friedman, a second, please. Mr. Ahern, roll call, please.
Mr. Ahern?
Yes.
Mr. Bradenham? Dr. Delaney?
Yes.
Ms. Friedman?
Yes.
Ms. Martinez?
Yes.
Ms. Nappi?
Yes.
Ms. Gentili?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, for the board president's report, first of all, I'd like to let the board know and the public know that Dr. Miker had an unexpected minor medical procedure that he had to attend to this week, and it's going to cause him to be out for a couple of days, but he's fine, and he will be here for the start of the school year, and he regrets the timing. He wishes he was here for this meeting, but I think it's more important that he's here for the beginning of the school year, so he sends his, regrets, and I know the board wishes him well in his final recovery. The other thing is, I know there's some concerns at the beginning of the school year. We're aware of parents' concerns on the new lunch procedure, on transportation issues. There's other issues that happen during the school year, in the beginning of the school year with scheduling issues, and there's always things that happen at the beginning of the school year, and things seem like, it might be a little off kilter, a little difficult, but we always get through it. There will be some minor, issues with buses, and there will be minor issues with scheduling, but I can assure you that the board and our staff will do everything they can prior to the start of the school year and in the beginning of the school year to make sure that every child's transition goes well. The board and the business administrator, we have some concerns like you do about, our new lunch policy, and Mr. Ferrera is going to speak to it during the superintendent's report. I just ask you to be assured that your children, their education, their environment during the school day is our utmost concern, and that nothing will be done to put a child in a difficult situation. Lunch balances will be handled at an adult level between the building staff, the building administrators, the principals, and parents, with no residual issue to the child. So with that, I wish everyone a great beginning of the school year. Any concerns you have, reach out to your building counselors, principals. They're the ones that are going to get you the right information and be able to handle your child's issue. Any concerns you have, come here to the Board of Education meeting. We need you here. We need your input. We want you to get your information here from us. And we appreciate having our community here. This is our school. These are our kids, and this is our community. And this room, when we see parents here, we know we have a team. So we wish everyone a great start of the school year. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ferrera for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. Gentili. So obviously, Ms. Gentili kind of explained that Dr. Micah had some unexpected medical issue, so he'll be back at the end of the week. kind of hearing both Dr. Mike and I hearing from parents as it relates to both the transportation issues as well as the lunch balances. I just wanted to kind of go over some of the highlights. And this is more just to kind of be, upfront with the community and in terms of what we're hearing, and to make ourselves available that in the event that there are other things that I didn't talk about tonight, or that I didn't talk specifically with other folks over the last week and a half or so, parents and such, that, we're here. The easiest way to kind of get a hold of me is through 732-705-4016, or just email us at ba@marsd.org. So that being said, the transportation piece is one of the things, starting off with transportation, is one of the issues that kind of, since I've been here for the last couple of years, has had some concern. And specifically last year, we had the conversation about kind of hazardous routes and what constitutes a hazardous route, and then consequently the impact on subscription busing seats available. That is going to be an ongoing conversation, and the reason that I say that is because of capacity. That right now the district only has a certain number of seats, and consequently those seats are going to be either towards mandated or towards subscription. That being said, the board kind of had a transportation committee created about a year ago. We had some unfortunate kind of delays with reference to the committee, not the committee's fault, I must say, but due to a resignation of the person that was leading the committee, and being that segue with the community, unfortunately kind of slowed us down for a few months. We reignited that in the springtime. Actually, the committee is meeting again tomorrow to kind of look at the results of the survey that went out pertaining to the hazardous routes and what constitutes a hazardous route. And I appreciate the 400+ responses that we got back. So I'm going to turn that data over to the committee tomorrow, talk about some other kind of topics that have kind of up over the last month or so. And then at that point, hopefully within the next month and a half, have the committee come back to the board and actually make some recommendations as we kind of get going for the budget process for the preparation of the 19-20 school year. Obviously, the main focus is to address the hazardous route definition, because like I said, that's going to be the jump-off point to everything else. In terms of the subscription data for this year, just to kind of give everybody a snapshot, we had 473 applications. 379 of those were actually completed with deposits. Of those, 88 received what I would call as no emails. And consequently, those were the ones that were kind of, that we reached out to a contractor to see if they can kind of service. The way that it breaks down is that it only affects high school and middle school. And both of those, the contractor kind of has notified us that they have enough seats to address both the high school and the middle school needs of those 88. So part of the questions that I've kind of been receiving from parents is, how does this happen year over year? And like I said, part of it is a capacity thing. The other issue that kind of came out of this year in preparation for the 18-19 school year was a greater emphasis on trying to transport every student at Cambridge Park. And most people will kind of look at us and say, okay, what does that have to do with middle school and high school? Well, just timing the overlap of when Cambridge Park starts and those two routes start and end, that has a role there. So in anticipation of that, what we did was, as whenever we finalized the routes, we went out to bid for both the Cambridge Park and as well as the subscription routes. We opened up both bids on August 14th, and unfortunately, there was no bidders. So that obviously was the worst case scenario, and that kind of circles back to the conversation that we had also with the Transportation Committee, which their goal for this year was to make as many seats available to anyone that wanted to purchase one. So that was our goal, and consequently that's how it kind of played out with reference to that bid. After the bid, and we realized that we didn't have any takers, Ms. Kaiser reached out to one of the contractors that also services a couple of neighboring districts in a similar capacity, and we basically said, okay, what do you have available for us? That's when they basically said that they had a route available for both the high school and the middle school. That's when the notifications went out to the parents on the 17th, as soon as we kind of finalized that conversation with the Worleys. And we basically said, look, just reach out to the Worleys. We asked them that they give preference to the folks that they had received the no emails. And they said that they gladly would do that. So as of right now, obviously that process is still open, and anybody that's still interested would kind of relate to that. With reference to the deposits, we sent out an email this afternoon just to kind of clarify that the deposits are going to be processed through our regular accounts payable process, which is once we wrap up in terms of if there's any movement, because what happens on an ongoing basis is that just because someone submitted an application, submitted a deposit, doesn't necessarily mean that they still need the seat. So in the very kind of minimal chance that happens, then at that point the purchase orders will be created to refund folks their deposits. So from a from a transportation standpoint, that's kind of how things kind of have developed this summer. Like I said, the intent in having the conversation with the Transportation Committee, the last meeting and, part of the meeting for tomorrow, is to basically try to come to a conclusion of what they deem to be a hazardous route. And if anybody wants to attend tomorrow, you're more than welcome to. If you want to kind of send me some information to share with the committee, I can do that as well. And like I said, even though no decisions are necessarily going to be made tomorrow, just kind of hearing from folks might be valuable.
Time and place?
So it's going to be 5:30 here in the same room. And like I said, the intent is that at the conclusion of the committee kind of digesting that information, they'll probably meet one other time, late September, early October, and then kind of come to the board with some recommendations as to what they see as the needs of the community. So that's the transportation piece. With reference to the lunch balance and the policy. So in 2016, the board kind of revised the policy that kind of set into motion some parameters for collecting outstanding balances. So it allowed students to still charge meals and go into the negative. And then at that point, there was a kind of a recovery process. And the recovery process started out with the child receiving a note from the cafeteria saying that they've just gone into the red. At the end of the week, if that debt hadn't been satisfied, there was a phone call that was generated from the business office alerting the parent of that outstanding balance. And then at the end of the month, there was a letter that got generated from the business office as well, pretty much alerting the parent of that same information. Along the way, depending on how the balance is kind of developed, the principal was to also get involved in having that conversation with the parent. And ultimately, it was to get to a point where the restriction could be that certain kids were going to be prevented from participating in extracurriculars, activities, and athletics. I'm going to be honest with the board and the community, and Mr. Eiler is here, and him being is part of the middle school. I've had a couple of conversations with him about kind of what that word meant to look like, and Mr. Scavage. And I could tell you that, on very, very minimal circumstances were kids actually prevented from participating in events as a result of these balances. So what does this all mean? This all means that, up to looking back at the last couple of years and concluding with June of this year, the balance had ballooned to over $32,000. And my understanding from hearing from a couple of folks on the board is that even before that policy got revised in 2016, there was a similar situation where it ballooned to a substantial number, which led the board, because this is the board's financial house. So it's not like a situation just because we have Chartwells or Sodexo or any one of those management companies manage our food service operation. It's still our funds. And those funds are enterprise in nature, which means that they have to be self-sustaining. So it can't be a situation where the district subsidizes in any way. So that being said, my understanding is that at some point over the last 4 or 5 years, the board pretty much wiped those balances clean with the intent that the 2016 version of the policy was going to address those situations. And that hasn't happened. So as part of a routine policy review that took place in the springtime, the board kind of took up the policy, and the recommendation by the administration was not to allow charging. So at that point, the board, with the routine policy procedure, kind of that goes through. And the last conversation that I wanted to make sure that we shared with the board, and subject to obviously the conversation that we've had with the principals from an administration standpoint, is how do we administer this, right? And because it's not a mandated policy, or excuse me, it's not a policy that has a required mandated procedure and regulation, we basically wanted to make sure that we provided the students the support that they needed and administered it in the best way possible based upon the building-based level. And what do I mean by that? That means that the high school needs and the elementary needs are different in terms of kind of dealing with balances and unpaid and that kind of thing. So those conversations took place with the administration, specifically the principals, and they had some concerns. Some of the concerns that we've heard from parents over the last couple of weeks as well, which is to make sure that we didn't embarrass students, that we didn't put students in the middle of a situation that was a discussion between adults, but at the same time, also kind of being proactive, and I definitely appreciate that kind of feedback, where folks were proactive in nature to say, hey, how about kind of a low balance warning? How about auto replenishment and that kind of stuff? And unfortunately, the current system as it's structured right now, that process would be manual, and which we can do, which would be, you run a report on a nightly basis or a weekly basis, and we say, okay, you're at this point, so just a heads up. So we could do that. We are looking at transitioning to a new payment system, not a new point of sale system or a student information system, but a new payment system. And in this payment system, it would allow parents to set up auto replenishment or specific alerts pertaining to that, and those would be managed by the parent as they see fit. So even though you might not necessarily utilize the payment system for making an electronic payment with a credit card, you could still set up that system to receive alerts about specific balances and that kind of thing. So the intent, like I said, the goal is to obviously address the concern that the board has expressed with reference to outstanding balances. The idea of having a charging or not allowing for charging is not abnormal. Actually, as a couple of years ago when the Department of Agriculture released some changes to the policy, that was one of the policy options that was given to districts. But ultimately, the bottom line is that we're here to support the kids. And what I mean by that is that the principals are going to have the authority to issue that student a one-day pass if the event that need arises. At the same time, the principal is going to be in the best position to analyze that need, and consequently, if it needs to escalate to a point where a guidance counselor or a nurse or a case manager needs to get involved, so be it. That's what they're there for, right? That's what the researchers are there for. So the intent is not that kids are going to go hungry. The intent is not to embarrass the students. The intent is to take a proactive approach to address an issue that the board is concerned about, and that situation is going to be handled at the building-based level whenever possible, because ultimately they're the ones who are going to have the better relationships with those parents to see exactly what the needs are. And then ultimately, like I said, in addition to kind of providing the board and the community with an update on this potential new payment system, the intent is that within the next couple of weeks, as we kind of get this going, I'll get that feedback from the principals, share with the board, and then probably circle back and give the community an update probably in the next 2 months or so. And the reason that the next 2 months are kind of critical is because the master eligibility list for students that are free and reduced you have to roll over the eligibility from the previous year for 30 serving days. And that typically happens around the 15th, 16th of October. So that's why September and October really have to kind of play out before we could kind of see how that is transitioning. And my expectation is that at the high school and at the elementary level, that's going to be something that the principals are going to, obviously, all principals are going to keep an eye on this and manage this as they see fit, but it's going to be a slightly different dynamic than at Lloyd Road at the middle school. And the reason that I say that is because at the elementary level, kids are already kind of pre-ordering their meals. So before the meals, before kids even walk into the lunchroom, those conversations would have taken place. At the high school, it's a little different dynamic. You could borrow a couple of dollars from friends or something like that. And once again, it's a different dynamic. But the Lloyd Road and the middle school, I think it's going to be a little bit different. And like I said, ultimately, the bottom line, and this was the conversation that we had with the board in July, is that, we roll this out for a few months. And if we see that we're having unintended consequences, then we come back to the drawing board and we tweak it and move on from there. So from that standpoint, I don't know, Ms. Gentile, if there's anything else that I kind of left off, but that's our kind of intent with both of those outstanding items.
No, and I appreciate that. And I think when you talk about the unintended consequences, the more benign ones are the ones that we have time to tweak. If there's something that's not benign, that has an impact, that would be something that we will handle more so in real time. And then one of the things that we discussed, I know everybody got a notice and was sent a letter in the mail, regardless if you owed a quarter or you owed $800. And I know some of the ones that got a letter that they owed a quarter and wondered why we spent 47 cents to send out a request. It wasn't to offend anyone, and it was mostly a letter to one is a letter to all, that, in the fairest way possible, if there's an account balance open, notice should go to everyone. And whether we do it by mail, for now, as Mr. Ferrer was talking about, the low balance alert, when that report is run, at the end of the day, someone in his office needs to be able to set up those robocalls or some way of a notification. So there's a cost to making that notice to families, whether we do it by mail or we do it internally in-house. And I think the goal is to try to get parents more proactive in being able to keep up with lunch balances and to help the district so that we can, trim this down and keep it manageable. It's not sustainable to keep running a deficit at the end of the year, and we've tried many different approaches. And I don't want to say we had a soft muscle approach, but we try to take a softer, I don't want to say a softer approach, but the approach that we tried to take that we thought was going to work really didn't bring us any results. We carried over the same balance as we did the previous year. So I know it seems maybe a little further extreme, and the board has had this conversation with our administrative team, and the best way to do it without an impact on a child during the day. This is an issue between adults, and the child is, not supposed to be in the middle of this. So I appreciate, that window of opportunity. All I can say is it's important for families to file those forms if it's a benefit and a service to their family. It's something they should take advantage of, and I think it's important for those forms to come in. And I think that's something else we're working on making sure that we get resources out to help families, take advantage of services available for their children, because in the end, we're here for kids. So I thank you for that. And with that, we'll move on to Mr. Bombardier, if you can start us through the curriculum and instruction agenda.
Good evening. Beginning with Part A, travel. We have one board member on for retro approval to attend the New Jersey School Board's Leadership Regional Training Workshop, one staff member attending the Frontline Applicant Training Certification course. We have 2 high school SAC members going to a Student Assistance County meeting, 2 going to a Monmouth County Traumatic Loss Coalition meeting, 4 CST members attending Handle with Care Instructor Certification, 1 CST member attending the International Dyslexia Association Identification and Intervention Workshop, 2 staff members attending the NJPSA Principal Evaluation Leadership Reflection and Growth Tool, one board member attending the New Jersey School Boards and NASA iSTEAM Army Education Tour, one staff member attending the New Jersey School Boards Convention, one head nurse attending the New Jersey chapter of American Academy of Pediatrics 27th Annual NJAAP School Health Conference, 5 staff members attending the New Jersey Science Convention, 2 staff members attending the Regional Professional Development Academy workshops with incur no cost, and 1 high school principal attending the NJPSA Special Education Focus Group Committee at no cost to the district. That's Part A. Moving on to Part B of the agenda. Item number 1 is asking the board to approve and adopt the following board goals for the 2018-2019 school year as indicated. Item number 2 is asking the board to approve the summer 2018 curriculum guide updates, which are curriculum and instruction attachment 2. Item number 3 is asking the board to approve and adopt all existing district curricula and textbooks for the 2018-19 school year. This is an annual reapproval. Item number 4 is asking the board to approve the following observation and evaluation instruments for the 2018-19 school year as an annual reapproval. Item number 5 is asking the Board of Education to approve the 2018-2019 observation and evaluation guidelines as an annual approval. Item number 6 is asking the board to approve the utilization of the highly effective teacher practice protocol as a flexibility option for highly effective tenure teachers during the 18-19 school year as per Achieve NJ regulations. This would allow any interested teacher to take part in that once this has been approved. Item number 7 is asking the board to approve the 2018-2019 District Professional Development Plan. Item number 8 is asking the board to approve the submission of a statement of assurance to the Department of Ed stating that the district has completed and submitted the district mentoring plan and the district professional development plan for the 2018-2019 school year. Item number 9 is asking the board to approve the contract between consultant Toby Carton of Tamka Educational Products and the Matawan Aberdeen Regional School District to provide 6 days of on-site professional development and coaching support focused on co-teaching. Item number 10 is asking the board to approve the contract between Wilson Language Training Corporation and the Matawan Aberdeen Regional School District to provide 6 days of on-site professional development and coaching focused on the implementation of foundations as part of the district's multi-tiered system of supports for interventionists and K-1 teachers for the 18-19 school year. Item number 11 is asking the board to approve Matawan Regional High School's adoption into the Paper Mill Playhouse. This is the Adopt a School project. Matawan Regional High School will be part of this program beginning in September 2018 and commencing in June 2022. Rationale provides an overview of this partnership. Item number 12 is asking the board to approve the students accepted into the Matawan Regional High School Early College Academy to attend a program orientation at Brookdale Community College on Thursday, August 30th, 2018. The only cost to the district is the transportation as indicated. Item number 13 is asking the board to approve the district's participation in the Monmouth County Arts and Education Program for the 2018-19 school year for any middle school or high school student that is selected. There is no cost to the district. All costs will be covered by parents and guardians of the students that apply for the program. Item number 14 is asking the board to approve the agreement between Matawan Regional High School and the Net Generation School Partnership Program for the 2018-2019 school year. Rationale indicates an overview of this contract, and there is no cost to the district. Item number 15 is asking the board to approve the 2018 MARSD School Improvement Panel or SKIP committee members for the 2018-2019 school year, and each member as well that will serve on the DIAC in addition to the other members. So one member of each SKIP will serve on the DIAC. However, the DIAC will comprise additional members. And just an important to note, the DIAC is no longer a requirement of the Achieve NJ Act. However, the district will continue our DIAC meetings for the 2018-2019 school year. SKIP committees do remain a requirement of Achieve NJ as indicated. Item number 16 is asking the Board of Education to approve the following documents for the 2018-19 school year: Matawan Middle School and Matawan Regional High School handbooks as indicated. Item number 17 is asking the board to approve the following textbooks for the 2018-19 school year. And item number 18 is asking the board to approve the district's participation in the Student and Exchange Visitor Program, SEVP, for the 2018-2019 school year. This program will provide foreign exchange opportunities for students in our middle school and high school, and that we'd be able to accept students coming over from China to experience the American school system here in our district. And that concludes the curriculum instruction agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Bombardier. May I have a motion to accept the curriculum and instruction agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Pick one. All right, Esposito, a second, please.
I'll second.
Nappi, thank you. Any board comments or questions on the CA&I agenda?
Ms. Gentili?
Yes, Dr. Delaney?
John, how many students are involved in the Husky Early College Academy?
14 students.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board comments or questions on curriculum and instruction? Ms. Esposito?
I just wanted to say I'm excited to see that the district's finally been awarded the opportunity to take part in the Paper Mill Playhouse Adopt a School. I think it's a great program. I'm excited to see that opportunity for our kids, so.
Thank you, Mrs. Esposito. Any other board members? Ms. Friedman?
It's general, but specific to this agenda too. The increase in opportunities in terms of curriculum has just been really overwhelming over the last couple of years, and it's fabulous. Between the foreign exchange student, the Paper Mill Playhouse, the letter I got from MAMS about the forensic program, all those things are just great. It's amazing to watch, so thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other board members? Seeing none, Ms. Perez, can you get us through the special services agenda, please?
Good evening. Under Special Services, item number 1, we're asking the Board of Education to approve bedside instruction for the following student, with the effective dates as listed. Under item number 2, we're asking the board to approve the following students to receive extraordinary services in an out-of-district placement for the 2018 ESY program and 18-19 school year. Extraordinary services, an example would be a one-to-one nursing in those locations. Under item number 3 is a revision for the Board of Education to approve the following students to attend an out-of-district placement for the 2018 ESY and 18-19 school year. This was previously approved. These are changes due to tuition rates. Under item number 4, we're asking the board to approve the following students to attend an out-of-district placement for the 18 ESY program, 18-19 school year, with the school location, costs, and effective dates as listed. Under item number 5, we're asking the board to approve the following tuition adjustment for the 16-17 school year. This was due to as a result of an audit that was done at the Lord Sterling School, and the change in cost is $4,356. Under item number 6, we're asking the board to approve the following providers for the 18-19 school year on an as-needed basis for staff coverage. This is listed as a speech-language pathologist at the cost listed. Under item number 7, we're asking the board to approve the following MOU agreement with the Community YMCA Counseling and Social Services for the 18-19 school year. This is an extension to include all elementary schools to receive additional counseling based on student need. That concludes special services. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Perez. May I have a motion to accept the special services agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Ms. Nappi, thank you. A second, please.
I'll second.
Ms. Martinez, thank you. Any board comments or questions on special services agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to Mr. Liebman to go to the personnel agenda.
Thank you and good evening. On page 1, Personnel, Section A, Resignations and Retirements, we're asking that the board approve the following resignations and retirements of names listed, including staff members and extracurricular hourly activities. Section B, Leave of Absence, 3 names listed for personal and medical leave. We're asking the board to approve those names as listed. Section C1, Appointments. We're asking the board to approve the following staff members, positions, and locations as listed on page 2 of 11 and concluding on page 3 of 11. Item number 2, mentors for the 2018-2019 school year. We're asking that the board approve the following mentor teachers, related subjects and locations as listed. Item number 3, extracurricular and hourly activities. This includes staff members and activities listed for sports activities, non-athletic activities, and hourly activities. That concludes on the top of page 5 of 11. Item number 4, Professional Development Committee. We're asking the board to approve the names as listed and the positions listed for professional development. Item number 5, Curriculum and Instruction. These are the Title I and Title IIA, Title III, and Title IV grants for the 2018-2019 school year. The names, positions, and activities are listed starting on the bottom of page 5 of 11, continuing on page 6 of 11, and concluding on page 7 of 11. Item number 6, Curriculum and Instruction, Summer Curriculum Writing, additional hours, 2 names as listed with the additional hours and costs. Item number 7, under Summer Theater, additional hours, we're asking the board to approve additional hours for the district head nurse, as she was able to conclude the needed hours for the summer program. Number 8, Summer ESY IEP meetings for 2018. We're asking that the board approve the name and position listed. This was for case management and IEP meetings. Item number 9, Affirmative Action Team for the 2018-2019 school year. We have 1 name and location as listed. The effective date and reason is listed as well. This is in order to fulfill the required mandate that each location have a point person for affirmative action. Item number 10, staff array changes. We're asking the board to approve the following staff array changes. If we first take a look at page 8 of 11, bring your attention to the second name listed, David Deegan. We would like the board to know that we're going to strike the date of September 1st, 2018. The effective date will begin 11/16/18 and conclude 1/31/19. Staff array changes continue on page 9 of 11 and conclude on page 10 of 11. Item number 11 is the HIB report. Item number 12, under Other A, we're asking the board to approve the job descriptions for ESL Professional Development Coach as part of the Title IIA grant funds for 2018-2019, and the job description for the Title I Coordinator. Under Other B, we're asking the board to approve the 2018-2019 Comprehensive Equity Plan. That would be Appendix B, updating policies. Item C, we're asking the board to approve employee number 431 for amending the longevity retro payments for that employee as listed. And item letter D, the pediatric nursing program student observers from Brookdale Community College for the 2018-2019 school year. That concludes the personnel agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Liebman. So with the one notice on date correction for Mr. Deegan for the effective start date of November 16th, incorporating that into the agenda, may I have a motion to accept the personnel agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Friedman. A second, please.
I'll second.
Mr. Ahern, thank you. Any board comments or questions on the personnel agenda? I would just like to take an opportunity to wish well our teachers that are retiring and resigning. I know Ms. Wallachek is relocating. It's a great loss for the music program in Ravine, but I'm sure we have a great person coming in to take over that program. But there are some staff members that were here for a very long time. Mrs. Gironi, who taught PE at Cliffwood. Our nurse, Marianne Reese, who retired and has been from Cliffwood to MAMS, wishing her well, and everyone else on that agenda. And to wish our new staff, our new hires, our new teachers, assistants, nurse, and staff members well on their new employment. And it's sad to see change, but it's also nice to welcome new people to our district. So the board wants to wish everyone well. And with that, Mr. Liebman, can you take us through policy?
Policy item number 1 is the recommendation for second reading for policy and regulation 7510, use of school facilities. There was several comments posted on the draft of policy 7510, so I'll defer to the board how they want to continue with a second reading and adoption or not. Item number 2, the superintendent recommends that the board approve the following policy as listed. It's policy for the 1,000 series, 2,000 series, 5,000 series, and 8,000 series. This is for second reading and adoption. Policy continues on page 2. Item number 3, the superintendent recommends to the board the approval of the following policy. First, we're asking for the board to abolish policy and regulation 5512, and then to adopt and approve a revised policy 5512. Just so the board's aware, policy 5512, the revised edition, includes the regulations from the previously soon-to-be abolished regulations. So it's been embedded into one. We are required to have policy 5512 ready to go for the beginning of the school year. Since this is the last board meeting before the start of September, we're asking that the board suspend the rules of bylaw 0131 that requires 2 board readings in order to adopt the policy of 5512 in a single reading. And that concludes the policy report.
Okay, first of all, do we have any board members who have a concern or objection to approving the new policy P5512 on the first reading, to push it through on first reading, so it's ready? Ms.
Mrs.
Nappi?
Gentili, do you want to move the agenda before we entertain motions, or?
Well, that's why I want to find out if the board is going to push this through, or it's going to be one of the ones that will be tabled. So I just wanted to see if there's any board objections to doing policy 5512, approving it on reading 1.
Oh, with you're talking about the harassment, the HIB one?
Exactly. So
I have no objection.
any other board? Board is fine on putting it through on reading 1? So we're ready for the start of the school year? Okay, that seems fine. And then, Ms. Nappi, you have?
Are you going to move the policy agenda first, and then
Yes.
entertain questions?
I'm sorry, I see what I meant. Gotcha. May I have a motion to accept the policy agenda?
I'll make a motion.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Nappi.
Mrs. Gentili, I'd like to request a tabling of the policy 7510, use of school facilities. I think, as has been discussed, it's a little bit still of a work in progress. So I'd like to move to table that so we can do some further work.
All right, so that, motion by Ms. Nappi. Do we have a second on the board to move the use of facilities policy?
Okay.
All right, so we have a second. And the only other thing that so we're going to table that, we have to determine best way forward for the board to have that dialogue and conversation on use of school facilities, and so that we can actually take advantage of having that policy going earlier in the school year rather than getting deferred, waiting for cows or rams. So I was wondering if the board has any ideas on how we want to work on the policy.
Ms. Gentili?
Ms. Martin?
I was just going to say the same thing. I'm open to delaying it, but we have to get moving on it, because I don't want to lose this school year. We get so caught up with so many things, so whatever you guys think, but I would assume the sooner the better so we can get organized. Thank you.
Ms.
Mrs.
Nappi?
Gentili? Yeah. If I can make a suggestion, I think an ad hoc committee here makes a lot of sense. We've done this type of thing before. It allows us to be able to convene on a separate night, kind of hash some things out, have some conversation, and, kind of chisel at this policy, which I think sometimes especially with a policy as complex as the facility use policy, we really need to be able to do that. There are so many layers to this, so many aspects of the community that we want to be able to have access to facilities, but yet layers to the costs, the legalities, et cetera, that it just makes sense to kind of look at it from like either an ad hoc committee type of thing, or that would be my suggestion.
Ms. Friedman?
What I was going to suggest is that we set some sort of time frame and see how many of us are available within that time frame, similar to an ad hoc situation, and send an email out to the soccer club, baseball club, those community leaders who we know would have a stakeholder in this. Anybody who Dr. Micah knows or Mr. Nasser knows has had issues in the past.
Sorry, any other board members? I know that September is tough. We have so many things on the schedule with back-to-school nights. We're going to have to get availability. I tend to think, you know, our summer meetings were with one a month in July, one in August. They were packed with a lot of activity, and I think we have presentations coming up in September on our calendar RAM. So from what I've heard and some of the discussions and the emails that were sent in by the board, it is important that we get it right. That if we've got it open and we're going to take a crack at it and try to make it more community-based, and we probably need to give it an opportunity. So I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to be able to select an availability date, because we're going to have to advertise it. It's going to have to be a special meeting. We're going to have to advertise it. So,
Well, if we're going to do an ad hoc committee, do we still I don't know that we still have to advertise it. If it's ad hoc committee, I think that's a good question. Maybe we need to get an answer to that. But in terms of availability and people to work on it, you know, we're close. I think we're very close, and depending on Mr. Nasser's availability, you know, I don't think we're not like 6 months away. We're a month or two away from just being able to get this right. But my only question would be, do we really need to advertise if it's an ad hoc, as long as it's not every board member? Now, if every board member wants to be there, then that would be a different story.
that's kind of my concern as to the number, and if Ms. Friedman wants to invite the community to be part of it. So, Mr. Rubin, our attorney, can
Yeah,
you
you
advise?
got 5 board members there, you can call what you want, you got yourself a board meeting. And when you say advertise, I'm assuming if this is not being done on the night of a regular board meeting, then you're having what's called a special meeting, which means you don't have to actually purchase an advertisement. What you have to do is give the news media 48 hours advance notice. They can publish it or not as they see fit. So I think we're using the term advertise a little loosely, but you could schedule a special meeting if there's going to be 5 board members there. If you want to dispense with all of that, just make sure you've got less than 5. So either way is fine, just as long as you follow the guidelines.
So just to clarify, if we have less than 5, but we want to have some special advisement of different people coming in to have conversation, as long as it's less than 5, we don't have to advertise?
If you have less than 5, you can meet at the diner with whoever you want.
Yes, exactly. Can I take a poll from the board as to who would want to help develop what that use of school facilities policy should look like going forward? Ms. Friedman, Ms. Nappi, I will. Ms. Martinez,
I
Mr.
don't mind,
Brittingham?
I don't mind helping, it's just that I work nights, so you guys just let me know what night.
And we have Mr. Brittingham, so we're up to 5 now.
I mean, I could, I mean, I don't have to be if you have enough without me, but if you need me, let me know.
No,
Because I'm the
well,
one who works nights, so.
Would the board prefer, would it be easier for the board to open it up to 4 board members to be on an ad hoc committee to take all the input? I know that we're going to be getting some summary on some of the recommendations and suggestions that were made by the board on that first reading. So maybe we can limit the ad hoc committee to 4 board members. So, going-
Yeah, I agree, it needs to be an ad hoc committee. I would be willing to step back, but I could certainly provide input.
All right, what we'll do is we'll have 4 and an alternate. This way, we have good representation on the board, and we'll have an alternate be able to fill in, but we'll keep it so that we're not 5 and constitute a meeting. Ms. Martinez?
I just asked that, and I was on the last ad hoc committee, and I remember doing this, but that when they have their information, that we sit as a board and go over it before we move forward. Is that okay?
Report findings for the board?
Right.
Yeah. that would
Okay, thank
be the
you.
way it would go forward. You know, a recommendation to the board as to what the ad hoc committee was able to recommend. So if it's okay, we'll name Ms. Friedman, Ms. Nappy, Ms. Martinez, Mr. Brenningham, and Mrs. Gentili, unless somebody else wants to be on it. I know you're working on you and I are working on negotiations, so we have negotiations still going on. But we'll see. Actually, let me be the alternate, because like I said, Ms. Esposito and I are still doing MRAA negotiations this month, and I will fill in as an alternate if one of the members can't be there. So what if we can do is, if you guys can suggest some dates that don't conflict and what time frame, and we'll piece this together. Can we contact Mr. Ferreira with some?
What I was going to suggest would be tonight, not taking up all these people's time, but the 4 of us, 5 of us get together, pick a date, or 2 dates, and notify the public, but also those particular interest groups that we know we have as quickly as possible.
I'm going to send an email to the 4 of us, and we can reply with dates. How's that sound?
Absolutely, and get Mr. Nasser involved too.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have, I need a motion and we had the motion and a second. We need to vote on the tabling of policy 7510, please.
Mr. Ahern? Yes. Mr. Brenningham?
Yes.
Dr. Delaney?
Yes.
Ms. Friedman?
Yes.
Ms. Martinez?
Yes.
Ms. Nappy?
Yes.
Ms. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Gentili?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other board comments or questions on the policy agenda, for the other items on the policy agenda? Seeing none, Mr. Ferreira, can you bring us through the finance and transportation agenda?
Yes, thank you. So a couple of minor edits that we had TBDs when the agenda was released. So when we get to that part, I'll kind of identify, and then also a couple of potential walk-ins for the board's consideration. So starting off with A1 on page 1 of 6, this is the monthly payroll and bills list amounts. Number 2 is the board secretary's report for June. There was a resolution on the initial agenda that talked about kind of the July transfer report as well. We pulled that just because there were some edits that we needed to make, so we'll have that for board consideration in September. Number 3, we have flooring at Cliffwood. This was as a result of some asbestos work that was done over the summer, and consequently the new floor. This is the new flooring that's going to be installed, or is actually being installed as we speak. Number 4. Still on page 1 of 6, this is the annual boiler inspections and startup at each of the buildings. Number 5, this is on page 2 of 6, dual use application that gets submitted to the DOE with reference to 1 classroom at Cliffwood. Number 6 and number 7 are 2 change orders for as part of the HVAC referendum work. There was the opportunity for the board to consider installing some high-efficiency light fixtures at a minimal cost because the labor is already included as part of the referendum project. Number 8 is additional repairs to the middle school driveway. Number 9 is the award for the vestibule security window here at Cambridge Park. Number 10 is the receipt of bids for paving at Cliffwood. Initially, as part of the discussion and the resolution for the July meeting, we chose to not recommend a vendor for the Cliffwood paving project that was budgeted as part of capital reserve. The reason for it is because it exceeded the budget amount. Subsequently, we revised the specifications, went back out to include specifically the playground area and also the kindergarten entrance that needs some concrete work. And that's our recommendation right now, is to award the base bid for the playground area and then the concrete work at Cliffwood. You'll note that Shore Top Construction is actually the lowest bidder, but they are considered non-responsive due to some mandatory documents not being part of their bid package. So consequently, we want on to the next lowest bidder. Number 11 on page 4 of 6 is the revised, board had awarded contracts for athletic and field trips. These are just the amended amounts based upon some additional trips that were scheduled to be awarded to the contractors and not being able to be covered in-house. Number 12 is receipt of a RFP for professional development coordinated through Mr. Bombardier in curriculum instruction. Page 5, number 13 is the cooperative sports application to NJSAA for the district to participate in ice hockey with Howell High School. Mr. Tiberzi is here during the board discussion phase. Should the board have any specific questions regarding the interest meeting that was held a couple of weeks ago, as well as some of the other details as how the program would potentially run with Howell High School. Mr. Tiberzi is here to answer some of those questions if needed. Number 14 and 15 are two appropriations for the 17-18 school year that require to be amended. Usually when the board kind of considers these at first glance, it's based upon a budgeted number. Due to some unexpected negotiations and the term of those negotiations, as well as with Maria, as well as MRAA for the administrators, but also for number 15, some additional kind of expenses pertaining to staffing and long-term staffing. Consequently, those are the amended amounts. Number 16 on page 6 of 6 is record of the evacuation drills for June, July, and August, not previously approved. And number B1, which is transportation, is the evacuation drills. Now, with reference to the two walk-in items that I'm passing out to the board right now, one of them, the board took action last month to approve, and I apologize for the late notice on this, but we just received the quote earlier this morning. The board had approved the hot water heaters to be installed at the high school. This is the not-to-exceed labor cost for a cooperative vendor to install such water heaters. And like I said, this is walk-in item number 17. And number 18 is based upon a communication that I shared with the board earlier today. So for both the board's perspective as well as the community, the middle school right now, we're doing a paving project in the front loop. As part of the core sampling that takes place, the engineer felt that the core samples came back at a reasonable place in terms of the spectrum of where it needs to be, and consequently designed the specifications for the bid. Upon further notice, specifically some of the more detailed areas in the main loop, it found that the core samples were not representative of what the underlayment, the base, was actually present, and consequently the recommendation from the engineer to the architect, to Mr. Nasser, and then to us and the board, is that a change order be issued. So Mr. Nasser was kind enough to kind of share with me kind of some of the details pertaining to what options are available to the board. Option A is to basically just, continue the ripping up of the existing blacktop, and consequently just putting down 2 inches of the new surface. At that point, option A doesn't cost the board any additional money. It's part of within the specifications as it was awarded. Option B talks about kind of possibly going back out to rebid because the underlayment base, the work that needs to be done across the whole parking area, is in excess of the allowable change order amount. So as a result of that, it would force us to kind of go back out to be rebid. That number, based upon Mr. Nasser's estimates, would probably be in the area of about $120,000. Obviously, it would give the parking lot a lot more stability and a lot more lifespan. And then option C, and then within the second option, option B, the main caveat is that obviously the parking lot would not be ready for the start of school. Option C is to basically reinforce the more high-trafficked areas, which is primarily the loop, leave the parking stalls alone, That reinforcement would probably extend the life of the parking lot to anywhere between 15 to 25 years, but it would come at a cost of approximately $48,000. So the recommendation to the board initially was to kind of not go with doing anything. But I definitely, because this could potentially be kind of a high kind of focus type of item, I definitely wanted to kind of have a recommendation in the event that the board wanted to go with the revised option C, which is the modified kind of underlayment, then at that point have that walk in as part of number 18. So the change order would be a not to exceed amount of in the amount of $48,800. And like I said, you know, from an administration standpoint, we're perfectly fine with doing the status quo as the contractor is awarded. In the event that the board wants to consider this option, we very well could do that as well. The second option, which is $120,000 for kind of a project, I think that's unrealistic considering the timing that we have with opening the school. So those are the two walk-in items
If you could just
that we have. Yes.
explain to the public what option one looks like, though, in terms of where, and you know, how well it will hold up.
Yeah, so option one with reference to just kind of recoding it with the 2 inches of resurfacing is something that is fairly common. The problem is that, especially with the weight restrictions of the type of vehicles that are kind of moving through that loop on any given time, the tendency is that the lifespan of that lot, instead of being 20 to 30 years, it would probably be closer to 5 to 15 years. And that's based upon the estimation of both Mr. Nasser and consultation with the architect and the engineer. So, you know, it's one of those things that we would kind of keep an eye on it. We probably would have a slightly higher maintenance cost over those 5 to 15 years. And it's something that we'll have to kind of address. But ultimately, it's going to be next time we draw up these specifications for this award, it definitely would have to be a situation where the underlayment, the base work would have to be done with sufficient time to address some of these unexpected situations.
And that area is already milled, so we're already at a
Correct.
point where we either have to pave it or do this incorporated kind of fix that would take out the weight requirement, the weight restrictions that would have to go in if we went with this measure?
Correct. It would kind of, it would provide us an insurance policy on those weight limits in terms of the vehicle traffic, especially in the traveled areas. The parking lot, the parking slots would be left as is, but the traveled areas would be kind of reinforced to provide a little bit more security with reference to those weight requirements.
Okay.
And that concludes the finance.
Thank you, Mr. Ferrera. So with the walk-in item 17 and walk-in item 18, the change order for the hot water heaters, the labor, and for the paving, the $48,000 is what Mr. Nasser, the architect and the engineer, suggests would be the best way forward. The middle school parking lot, that would be the recommendation.
Correct.
So with that in mind, may I have a motion to accept the finance and transportation agenda?
I'll make a motion.
May I have a second? Any board comments or questions on the finance and transportation agenda?
Ms. Gentili?
Mrs. Martinez?
Mr. Ferrer, I just want to make sure, the original, the 2 inches down, that was what we assumed we were doing, but then when we got out there and realized we need more than just that, so that's why there's no cost to that, because that's what we originally planned for?
Correct.
But this 48,000 will be done for school if we do C?
Yes, if, so if the board kind of chooses not to go through with that kind of additional underlayment work, the expectation is that the project will wrap up Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. If the board still does, awards that change order, the expectation and timing will probably extend into the weekend, but definitely before school starts.
Thank you.
Ms. Freeman?
Part of that was one of my questions, too. Just generally speaking, with the HVAC and all the other facilities projects that have been going on, the buildings are, other than the MAM's parking lot, are good to go?
I wish I could say yes, but that's not the case. So there's still obviously some HVAC work that is happening, especially at the middle school, just because it was one of the biggest projects for this summer. So there's still some ceiling grids that are going up. The mechanicals and all the rough stuff is pretty much done. Rooftop stuff is pretty much done as well. But yes, there are some finishing touches, especially as it relates to ceiling grids and lighting and that kind of stuff. All that is expected to be wrapped up by the weekend. So from that standpoint, yeah, I'm not going to say that the schools are ready to be occupied tomorrow, but we're definitely getting close.
Had one follow-up to the MAM's parking lot. By doing the change order and reinforcing the loop, there will still be increased maintenance on it, because I imagine the snow is going to do a lot more damage. We're kicking the can down the road just a little further.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, because typically with a parking lot, especially if the core samples come back and you spec it out the right way with, routine maintenance, and that's a critical point, the expectation is that you will get 20 to 30 years out of it. Now, if you're in a situation where the cores don't come back where you expected, the specifications obviously don't match up in terms of what your exact needs are, you have some water issues, some other base issues, consequently, then at that point, it's going to shorten that life, and potentially increase the maintenance costs to try to extend that life. So in essence, that's a good way to put it, is that, kicking the can down the road would probably be to just do what was specified in the original contract, at no additional cost to the board. Kicking the can a little further would be this change order. And, from a dollars and cents standpoint, is it unrealistic to think that we're going to have $48,000 of additional maintenance costs for that last 5 or 10 years? Maybe. So it might be a situation where it's either a situation where we pay for it now, or we pay for it with additional maintenance costs towards the latter stages of the parking lot.
And one other follow-up, sorry. So the loop is where the buses go. Is there any safety issue if it's not reinforced?
No, the loop that this is in reference to is actually the front loop, the front parking lot. The back driveway and the loop where the buses go, that was actually, there was some work being done there this summer as well, but primarily that was addressed last year as part of a capital reserve project as well.
The late buses pick up in the front though, right? The late bus?
I want to say yes.
Yeah.
I want to say yes. But if that's a situation that we, if we need to kind of consider and reroute them to the back, I'm sure that we can work with Mr. Wells on, to see how that potentially could be worked out.
Okay, Ms. Nappi?
I just have a couple of things. When was the parking lot last paved, the portion that we're talking about?
Yeah, I checked with Mr. Nasser on that. I believe it was around 2004. So with the minimal kind of underlayment work that was done, that we found out this year, we got about 15 years worth of use out of it.
So this option 3 for 48 and change there, this is going to be done by the school year and get us another 15 years or so, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so with option 2, in terms of going back out to bid, or the option about the...
Option 3C, whatever.
Gotcha.
change order.
The change order one. So we're looking at 15 to 25 years. And that's based upon what we got out of the parking lot this time.
Thank you. That was all the question I had on item 18, but with regard to item 11, with the extracurricular routes, does this cover our athletic routes now? Or no? It doesn't look like it based on what I read, but I just want to clarify.
So the athletic routes and the field trips went out to bid. So we had some vendors, 2 vendors pick up the bids and actually award, the recommendation is to award the contract for those 2 vendors. That pretty much encompassed the fall and some of the winter work. We're going to be going out to bid probably in the next month for the remainder of the winter work as well as the spring. At that point, based upon the responses on those bids, Ms. Kaiser will analyze to see what she wants to keep in-house and what she wants to, bless you, and what she wants to contract out with a vendor. So from a coverage standpoint, I know that Ms. Kaiser and Mr. Tiberzi have kind of been working on, with reference to the athletic stuff, in terms of if there's anything that's uncovered.
Bless you.
But for the most part, in terms of timing, we wanted to kind of get out a bid to see if we could kind of get some interest and get some vendors in the door, so that way we can address at least the fall and some of the winter.
So on this Exhibit B, the things that don't have anything written next to it are being covered in-house. Is that accurate?
Yes, so anything that a vendor did not necessarily bid on is either going to be covered in-house, or we're going to enter into a separate agreement with kind of an ad hoc contractor as needed based upon their availability for those specific days.
Okay, and then my last question was regarding the change for the negotiations attorney. I submitted my question. It just seems like it was quite a bit of money. Did we not foresee this coming, or is this because of the change in law firm? You know, I'm just curious as to the genesis of this.
I think it's primarily based upon what we had budgeted for labor negotiations as it pertains to Maria and MRAA. As the board knows and the community may know, the negotiations with Maria kind of extended past and involved kind of a mediator, and it kind of had the timing of it was longer than anticipated, and it encompassed multiple years. So as a result of that, for the 17-18 year, we exceeded the amount that we had foreseen as part of the budget process. The expectation was that we probably were going to exceed it, but obviously this number is a reality.
So I think what I'm just asking is, if we budgeted for this change, that this amount, like we projected for this $60,000, or no? Is it because it's coming from the gap we didn't budget for? I'm just trying to figure out if we. Yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't part of the original budget for the 17-18 when it was crafted, but it was something that we were able to make up based upon some reduced costs in other areas. I can't tell you specifically what areas were right now. I can later on, but something maybe like, health benefits kind of came in a little bit lower than we expected, or maybe utilities came in a little bit lower, and consequently that went to support the over expenditure on this line.
Mr. Ferrer, I just quick to comment on that. I guess it's kind of hard to budget with that because you really don't know how long you're going to be in negotiations, so that really is a tentative number to begin with.
Yes, I would agree with that. I would say when we kind of prepare the budget, we're trying to kind of hit a slightly moving target,
Okay.
because we're hoping for the best in terms of kind of the participation with the negotiations and kind of how we move forward. But you're right, at any given time, any given year during negotiations, things could kind of go a little bit off track and consequently extend and consequently require other expenses.
Thank you.
Just relating to the paving project, I had two things. It's milled, so we have to do something. We have to either put 2 inches of asphalt on it. If we were to put it out and rebid and try to do the whole project, we wouldn't be ready for the start of the school year, and we don't know how those bids are going to come in, and we don't know if anybody's available, because it's at the time of the year that the paving contractors are really busy. So while we have somebody on site and we already have a parking lot that's milled, I had concerns, but I can tell you this: so you put 2 inches of asphalt on an unstable base, we know we're going to have a problem shortly down the road, not long-term down the road. And it is a heavily used driveway. It's a parking lot, and I know our late buses come in and out of there. So I had some concerns too, but I can understand why the architect and the engineer and our, Adam, in charge of our facilities, made the recommendation to do the stability fix in that main driving lane, the arc that goes around the middle school. It's the one thing that's going to take something that will likely start showing real signs of wear shortly under 10 years. And it could go, with some bad winters, it would start seeing some failure in 5 years is what they projected. If we go with that cutout area where we change the base and we make it stable and we put that asphalt layer down and that seal layer that he's talking about, that in between, it takes 2 inches of asphalt and reinforces it to the pounds per square inch of a 3-inch asphalt road base. You can pay for 3 inches of asphalt, or you can pay for 2 inches of asphalt in this repair, and it's going to be about the same cost, but stability-wise, you'll get 15 to 25 years out of it. So just from my perspective, it's not anything you want to hear when you're going through a project, especially when we've done some pre-engineering and pre-architect work to make sure, to do core samples to see what we had out there. But that happens with construction. Sometimes you rip something up and you find something you don't expect. We've had that with asbestos in the buildings when we were trying to do the HVAC work, and you come up with some asbestos you didn't know was there. So from my perspective, I think that although I don't like the additional cost, I think it's the most cost-effective way to fix that parking lot and to have a surface that's going to be withstand the traffic and the weather and last us 15 to 25 years, and that's all I wanted to add about that. Ms. Friedman?
Thank you.
Just a comment, I also think that the change order is probably the way to go, but my fear isn't actually the change order, it's the fear that that is not usable for the first day of school. Mr. Eiler's here, I remember the first day of my daughter and Mr. Eiler jumping through traffic. I don't want to see Mr. Wells do that. So that's a terrifying thought, and that has to be workable somehow.
Yeah, what I can do is, independent of how the board kind of takes action today, I'll make sure that we have a revised project schedule from the contractor tomorrow, and then send it out to the board around lunchtime. I know Mr. Nasser has been on site on a couple of the last few days, working with the contractors and working with Mr. Wells on kind of these exact situations that Ms. Friedman just brought up. But I'll get that revised project schedule out there to the board, and in the event that that project schedule doesn't necessarily offer us any more, the board very well, can give us the consensus to pull that back.
Just on an up note, it says additional work would add 2 days to the project to 4 total to complete from this point. So in the proposal that he gave, it seems that the contractor is committing to the fact that, he'll be able to complete that sub-base work within the 2 days and finish the project. But I think it's important that we know that we'll be ready for the beginning of the school year. And that was one of the conversations that seemed to be that the contractor, he's on site, he's done the milling work, so he's mobilized and he's here. So I think based on what they've proposed here, that they understand that, we need to be ready for the start of the school year, but it's important to just verify, that he stays with the timeframe that he committed on that work.